Hello there. My name is Jason Perkins. I'd like to welcome you to another episode in my Georgia Workers' Compensation video series. I'm an attorney who specializes in handling Georgia workers' compensation cases. I created this series of videos to provide people who have been hurt at work with helpful information about Georgia's workers' compensation law. Today I want to discuss the subject of hip replacements for workers' compensation injuries. And one of the first questions you may have about this subject is, does workers' compensation cover hip replacements? Well, the answer to that is it depends. Workers' compensation generally covers the medical treatment and testing you need as a result of a work-related injury. So hip replacements are covered under workers' compensation. But the insurance company will often try to argue that a hip replacement after a workers' compensation injury is not needed because of that injury. So workers' compensation insurance is only responsible for paying for the medical treatment you need as a result of the injury that you happen at work. Now, fortunately, Georgia's workers' compensation law covers treatment when the condition you developed was caused by the injury at work or when the injury at work aggravated to the point that you need that treatment. So even if you have a pre-existing condition in your hip and then you have an injury at work that causes you to then need a hip replacement, it should still be covered by workers' compensation. But expect that the workers' compensation insurance company will likely argue that they're not responsible for paying for your hip replacement. The opinions of your doctors are going to matter a lot in this situation. Now, assuming that your hip replacement is covered under workers' compensation, are there any special rules that apply? There is one special rule that does apply to hip replacements and other body part replacements, and that rule has to do with your medical treatment. So medical treatment for Georgia workers' compensation injury is limited to 400 weeks in most cases. What that means is the insurance company does not have to pay for medical treatment and testing that occurs more than 400 weeks after your injury occurred, unless you qualify for what's called a catastrophic designation. But there are some exceptions to that rule, and hip replacements fit within one of those exceptions. So if you have a hip replacement or another body part replacement, then there's an exception that provides that you can still get treatment for that more than 400 weeks after your injury. Now, this exception is important because sometimes you might have a hip replacement and the hip replacement wears out and you need another hip replacement down the line. And this is what this exception is designed to cover. Now, one important thing about it is in order for this exception to apply, your initial hip replacement does have to happen within 400 weeks of your work-related injury. Now, will you receive permanent partial disability benefits following a hip replacement? You almost certainly will. Permanent partial disability benefits are benefits workers' comp pays you for a permanent impairment as a result of a work-related injury. And doctors in Georgia are required to use a book called the American Medical Association's Guides to the Evaluation of Permanent Impairment when they give you a permanent partial disability rating. Specifically, they're required to use the 5th edition of that book, and the 5th edition does provide for permanent partial disability ratings following a hip replacement. In most situations, you should receive a permanent partial disability rating of at least 37% to your lower extremity, but it will depend on how successful your hip replacement is. Now, a kind of follow-up question is, will you receive a settlement following a hip replacement? Well, that depends. You're not necessarily entitled to a settlement in a workers' compensation case, but many workers' compensation cases do settle, and the workers' compensation insurance company will almost certainly be interested in settling your case. Now, the issue you're going to run into is the insurance company is going to want to settle your case for as little as possible because they're in business, and the more they pay out in settlement, the less they make. So they're going to try to settle for as little as possible. Now, from your end, you probably want to settle your case for as much as possible. But in order to make a good decision about settlement, you're going to have to really understand things. I've created other videos in the workers' compensation video series that focus more specifically on settlement. But the one piece of information I'd like to give you here is be sure and get a free consultation with a workers' compensation attorney before looking to settlement your case, if not beforehand. Settlement's final once it's approved by the State Board of Workers' Compensation. So if you settle your case and then change your mind later because you settled for too little, you're probably not going to be able to back out of that. So just be sure and talk with a workers' compensation attorney first. Hope you found this information about workers' compensation hip replacements helpful. If you have, please let me know that. One of the best ways you can do that is by liking this video or giving it a thumbs up. If you've got more questions about workers' compensation in Georgia, please reach out to me and schedule a free consultation about your case. It's one of the best ways to get questions answered. There's two easy ways you can set up that free consultation. The first is by calling the phone number at the bottom of the screen, and the other is by reaching out to us to our website, which is www.perkinslawtalk.com. Just click on and submit the free consultation request form, and we'll reach out to you and get that consultation scheduled. I'd like to thank you again for watching this video today. I want to wish you the best of luck as you recover from your injuries.